Hey guys, it's Zach back with another review, this time the Royal Kludge C68 Hall Effect keyboard. My first time trying a keyboard from them. I've tried their mice. Time to give their keyboard a shot, something that they are much more known for. Let's jump right into specs and pricing. So as you can see, pretty affordable here at $65. 20% off right now during their cyber sale. It's usually about $50 on Amazon. Cool thing, you can get a bunch of different language layouts here. And the Magnetic series does have a bunch of different versions, but do know they are distinctly different looking keyboards. Some things to know, this was their first magnetic keyboard. It is a 65% 68 key MDA profile PBT keycaps. MDA is something we should talk about. So here's a quick just visual of Cherry versus MDA. They are actually a higher profile and they have more of like a circular sort of almost basin here on the top compared to Cherry. So it is definitely a different typing feel, and it'll be personal preference whether or not you like it. Coming back to the board though, it does have 8K polling, rapid trigger. There is a WebDriver, SOCD, DKS, mod tap, etc., etc. The Hall Effect switches have a minimum trigger force of 37 plus or minus 10. Pretty big variance there, and 37 is on the higher end of initial force, 60 for total force, a little bit on the higher end too, and a longer travel at 3.8 millimeters, so a slightly different experience than on some other keyboards. I'll talk about that here in a bit. And you know, the board is wired only, no wireless, so let's check out the actual physical board itself. Build quality here, even with this plastic shell, very good. There is absolutely no warping going on when I try to cause that on the board. Got some nice rubberized feet here, slight tilt to the profile so it can sit flat and still be very comfortable for your typing needs. Has like this sort of greenish, mintish, matcha almost look to the light faded like green look to the aesthetic, which is interesting. Maybe not my favorite, but it's a lot better than plain black or plain white. And a bit different typeface here as well on the keycaps, very large defined letters. You can see here that sort of like basin on top of the MDA profile keycaps that I was talking about. Let's pop one of those off. And as you can see here, the difference in profile almost makes it feel like shorter in some ways, but it really is not. I felt like closer to the switches, I guess, when pressing these, and I think it's because of that defined dip here on top of the keycap, but overall a well-made keycap, a bit of just sort of texturing here on the top. And then taking a look here at the switches, very nicely boxed, relatively stable, not the most stable stem I've ever seen. There is a little bit of wobble here, but nothing that really bothered me when I was typing or playing. And for what it's worth, sort of an aesthetically pleasing switch in my opinion here with the clear upper casing. As far as form factor, 65% 68 key is, I guess, the minimum that I'm super comfortable with. I will try 60% keyboards now and then, but I really do prefer having these arrow keys here, as well as a dedicated delete key. So this passes all of the checks for not being 75%. Obviously, it does not have any knobs or extra switches, etc. They're not necessary, particularly with the Stream Deck that I reviewed recently. But again, a lot of you may really like to have those features, and they're not here on this board. Plugging this bad boy in here, we get a look at the RGB. I would say the coloration of the RGB sort of matches the board. It's a little bit lighter, almost a pastel. I kind of feel like this is like an Easter springtime keyboard theme, if I'm going to be honest with you. It does have just like a nice little rainbow effect. Obviously, the keycaps here not shining through in any way, so it's more of an ambient around the edges lighting effect. Not dull by any means, but not bright, gonna pop off of the screen, going to blind you in any way either. So we are now here in the WebDriver for the C68. So coming to performance settings, you can see they have easy ways to select different sets of keys here on the board, which is very nice. And also something that I really like is that you can change the travel distance here by typing. Some of the lesser firmwares, I would say, require you to sort of drag this or only click, and this goes in increments of 1, but here obviously being able to type exactly what you want is very nice. And as you can see here, I have all of the keys on the board set to the minimum for all of the rapid trigger and the actuation with 0 dead zone and 8,000 hertz. So it does seem that across the board when I have actuation on 0.01, I just get random key actuations that aren't even necessarily really close to the key that I'm pressing. So 0.01 does seem to be too sensitive for this keyboard. More so a feature of how sensitive the board is, I think, but it's not something where I could even type normally on 0.04 without a bunch of crazy mistakes. Something like 0.1 got a lot more accurate, and if I'm being honest, this is not how I would typically use a keyboard. I would typically set most things to something like 1.2 without the need for much rapid trigger, but we can set the rapid trigger down anyway, and then I would deselect them all and just set the movement keys to the most sensitive. And I will say, when you put it on 0.01, you do feel movement in the keycap and the switch before the actual actuation occurs, which is very good. There were some keyboards where I feel like if I breathed on the keyboard, they would actuate. Not the case here. Beyond that, going to advanced keys, if you click on the key, you get the option here to do anything like mod tap, DKS. I'm going to do SOCD with A and with D, and in testing that works exactly as I would expect it to. Beyond that, you can create some macros should you want to, and then beyond that, you can change the lighting. Flowers Bloom is the one that I almost always use if it's available on a keyboard. And now a quick sound test. Coming back to the board for overall impressions though, this is a board where if you set minimum actuation there, WASD or whatever keys you have it on are extremely sensitive. You could get actuations that you don't want, or hovering your fingers over the keys here. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you want the most sensitive experience. Like the Wooting would do that, and Wooting is one of the top boards. Not really a problem. A board where I would set it to 0.1 for my reference trigger, it would still feel very, very responsive. Doing some quick testing in just a private lobby in Fortnite, the movement felt very fluid when I dialed in the settings that I liked. No real issues there, but again, if you put the whole board on lowest actuation, technically, potentially with these different profile keycaps, I was mistyping, mispressing like crazy, so just something to note. Not really a board flaw necessarily, you just don't want to go minimum actuation. Overall impressions wise, I will say this is not my favorite keyboard because I think I just couldn't get used to the keycap profile, but I think the performance is very good. It felt stable in game. When I dialed in those settings, I was able to perform pretty much up to my standards in a few quick tests, just sort of running around, sliding, quickly aiming, getting in a very fluid movement. The thing I would point out is you may love the way these keycaps feel. They are sort of nice to the touch when typing, but there is a learning curve, a sort of an adaptation curve to make them feel more natural. I would like to see Royal Kludge come out with maybe a cherry profile or a KOL profile of a 75% keyboard with a knob potentially in a few different colorways, but overall, not a lot of complaints on the board. Very well built, not insane wobble here on the keys, and generally a positive experience here with the Royal Kludge C68. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. You can follow me on X at DashZach. Check out my peripheral Discord server as well as the Mousecast podcast. And with that, we'll see you.